Did you hear about that day of infamy that took place in Richmond Hill, Ontario recently? Indeed, this just in, apparently the majority of Richmond Hill City Council is anti-Aboriginal? Huh? Indeed, check out the story in the tragically named local newspaper, the Richmond Hill Liberal. Quote, "It was an emotional night for Richmond Hill residents at the council meeting on March 25th. Residents who packed the council chamber gasped and booed as councillors decided not to start council meetings with an Indigenous land acknowledgement," end quote. Now, for those who don't keep up with such fads, Indigenous land acknowledgements are now commonplace at the start of events wherever progressives gather. Universities, at protests, and yes, even in government legislatures. They're a way for white virtue signalers to ask forgiveness for daring to set foot on what used to be First Nations territory. This particular acknowledgement, had it been adopted, would have noted that Richmond Hill is situated upon the traditional territories of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people, whose presence continues to this day. But gracious, who would be so anti-Indian to veto such a statement as that? Well, I reached out to Councillor Carmen Pirelli, who was opposed to opening council meetings with an Indigenous land acknowledgement. I wanted to see if there was more to this story than what the Richmond Hill Liberal was reporting, and shockers, indeed there is. Pirelli notes a few pertinent points. First, in the Federal Truth and Reconciliation Report, there are precisely 94 calls to action, and not a single call to action urges Canadian municipalities to open their meetings with a native land acknowledgement. Furthermore, Pirelli says he personally reached out to natives who live in Richmond Hill. Everyone he spoke to said they are not interested in such an acknowledgement. In fact, one native dismissed this as being an act of patronizing virtue signaling, telling Pirelli that this whole acknowledgement movement is being spearheaded by, quote, white people who want to pat themselves on the back, end quote. So who on council was supporting this agenda? Well, the motion was put forward by David West and seconded by Karen Selovitz. It was also supported by Mayor Dave Barrow. How interesting that these three musketeers were the same ones who defeated a motion put forth by Councillor Greg Barrows 3 years ago that would have seen Richmond Hill start its council meetings with the playing of O Canada. Incredibly, this was voted down by the likes of Barrow, West, and Selovitz after the town received a legal opinion. Apparently, it's the God word in the anthem that makes O Canada song non grata, as it might be offensive to atheists. Regardless, the same councillors who support an Indigenous land acknowledgement find O Canada to be offensive? Oh, that's offensive. It should also be noted that anti-O Canada councillor David West also voted against a motion earlier this year, which nevertheless did carry, that would see a new street in Richmond Hill named Banshee Lane. This motion was put forward by Councillor Greg Barrows, who wanted to acknowledge the Banshee Air Cadets, one of the country's largest Air Cadets organizations that's located in Richmond Hill. And the Banshee was also the name of a fighter jet used by the Royal Canadian Navy from 1955 to 1962. So not only does Mr. West not want to listen to 90 seconds worth of O Canada prior to a council meeting, he also apparently isn't all into celebrating Canadian military history either. How weird is that? Oh, and you may recall the name Karen Selovitz from previous reports in this very space. Isn't it perverse that she supports an Indigenous land acknowledgement, given that she apparently believes that she owns a trademark on the term Ward 5? Remember this phone call she made to a constituent who was dealing with stage 4 cancer at the time? Check it out.
Hi, Steffi. This is Karen. I've left you a text message, and I've left a message for Matt Bergman as well to call me back. I've just been informed that he's going to be naming your Sunday night music event at Archibald's the Ward 5 Music Jam or Music Fest, whatever it is he's going to be calling it. Please be advised that nobody but Richmond Hill councillors use the term ward in any event unless you are a councillor. If Matt Bergman and you, because you are York Region Open Mic and this is under your name, if you in any way name your event which does not have my sponsorship or my authority as the Ward 5 Music Jam at Archibald's on Sunday night, I will take legal action against both of you and your company. This is not a joke. I'm away for the weekend in Collingwood with Derek. I don't need this kind of aggravation. I don't need it from the likes of Nat Groupie, and I certainly don't need it from the likes of you. I don't know what it is that I've ever done to you or I've ever done to Nat Groupie. So you can let him listen to this if he doesn't have the balls to call me back. But be advised, Steffi, that if you in any way, or if Matt Bergman in any way calls your Sunday night jam at Archibald's the Ward 5 event, there is going to be serious problems that you are both going to have to deal with legally. Nobody does this. It is just not done. Only councillors who are elected to wards use that terminology. I would appreciate it if you call me back or you send me a text and you assure me that this has been taken care of by you as this is your event. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Wow. You know, next time I see Karen Selovitz, I will make it a point to ask Richmond Hill's Royal Highness if she will grant permission to the city's Indigenous folk to use the term Ward 5. Bottom line, contrary to what's being reported by mainstream media fish wrap, there is clearly more to the story of Indigenous land acknowledgements, and it has nothing to do with being anti-Native. Furthermore, it would be kind of nice to see those white liberals who support an acknowledgement also getting behind supporting initiatives such as the singing of O Canada and naming a street Banshee Lane, but then again, perhaps being patriotic to our nation and honoring its military history is simply beyond their pay grade. For the Rebel.media, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, you may have heard the Rebel has a new app. Please go to the App Store and download the Rebel Media app today.